Hey there, welcome to the Tina channel. In this video we're going to be showing you how you can use syntax highlighting alongside the TinaMarkdown component and the rich text editor. So I've created a very basic implementation of Tina using a string for the title and a rich text editor for our body section. Now inside of our dynamic route for slugs, we're just using our TinaMarkdown to take care of any markdown that somebody enters on a blog post. And we're going to use all of this for our example. The first thing we need to do is look at what code looks like to our users in this current state. Then we can go back and add syntax highlighting and show how that works when integrated with TinaMarkdown. So I've launched the application and I've inserted a code block. And as you can see, it's very hard to tell that this is actual code. Although it does present differently than standard text, as you can see from the heading, it's still kind of hard to differentiate between the two. And if this was in the middle of a paragraph, it may be hard for your users to pick up. So let's add a custom component that can handle syntax highlighting using Prism. So now we're back in our code, the first thing we need to do is install the package that we want to use. Now I'm going to use Prism for this, and I'm going to use the React Syntax Highlighter package, but you can pick whichever package you prefer. The idea is the same. So we can do yarn add React Syntax Highlighter, and we can install this package. Once this is installed, we can start creating our custom component. So now that's installed, let's create a custom component. I'm going to call this component code block, but you can call it whatever you prefer, syntax highlighter or code highlights or whatever you prefer, but I'm going to use code block for this example. So I've created this component called code block, and now we can start creating our own custom syntax highlighting for our code. So firstly, we need to import our syntax highlighter and a theme to use with our syntax highlighter. I'm a fan of Atomic 1 Dark, so I'm going to be using that in this example, but let's start by importing those. Import Prism as syntax highlighter from React Syntax Highlighter. And then I'm just going to copy and paste the theme in so that we have that. And now we can start creating our custom component. So we can do const code block equals, and then we're going to pass in a couple of properties here. So we need to import both the code and the language. So that would be children, comma, language. And then inside of our actual function is where we can return a syntax highlight. So we need to do return, and then inside of the return, you can do syntax highlight. We need to pass in the theme, the language, and the code. Those are all properties. So code will be our children. The language will be the language that we pass in. And then the style will be our Atom 1 Dark. And then we can close out, and that's all we need to do syntax highlighting. Obviously, I'm not going to style it to make it small and fit on the page or handle responsiveness, all those kinds of things. I'll leave that up to you, but this gives you an idea. One thing I will do here is just set these to an empty string and this language to JSX if there is no language passed down or if there's no children passed down. So now our code block is finished. We just need to export that out. So we can do export code block, and then we can take this code block and use it in our slug. So we can do import code block from components, and then we can use this inside our TinaMarkdown. So the question is, how do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is create a component section that's going to handle all of our components. If we want anything else custom, such as maybe you want a video player or a newsletter insert or any of those kinds of things that you can build using MDX. Then we need to tell it what we're looking for. So in this example, we're going to be using code_block, and that's the section of code that will hold all of your blocks of code that you want highlighted. Then we need to pass in the props, and then inside of this code block is where we're going to do our syntax highlighting. So we can do return code block and then pass in the props that we need. So we need to pass in our children, and that will be props.children. And then the language will be props.language. Then the final piece is to take this component and pass it through our TinaMarkdown. So there's a props called components, and we can pass in our own components. Now, if we launch the application, we should have syntax highlighting, giving our users the ability to see when code starts, as well as where functions end and where braces are, and all those good and important things that you need when you're using code blocks. So as you can see, we now have syntax highlighting, and if I add other things such as a function, that will also get highlighted with the correct syntax highlighting, making it easy for your users to understand what you're trying to explain in a code block.